Well, if you're happy, Senator Cormann, we can go to question time 30 seconds early. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann. Today's release of labour force figures for May show a further 227,700 jobs were lost, bringing the total jobs lost since March to 835,000. How many of these losses could have been prevented if the government had extended JobKeeper?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Indeed, today it was announced that employment fell by almost 227,000 jobs in May 2020, including 89,100 full-time jobs and 138,600 part-time jobs. It's another sad day, but we of course knew that this was coming. In case the opposition missed it, we're dealing with a 1 in 100 years global pandemic, and with the very significant health and economic consequences of that pandemic here in Australia and around the world. And if you compare Australia's performance, both in terms of the health response as well as in terms of the economic impact and the jobs impact, we are performing comparatively well. Which obviously doesn't take away the fact that this is a very difficult time for lots of Australians, and we've always been upfront about the fact that as we work our way through this crisis, many Australians.
Senator Gallagher, on a point of order.
Just on relevance, the question was how many of the job losses could have been prevented if the government had extended JobKeeper. We've only got 54 seconds left for the question.
And that was the conclusion of the question. I would consider the Minister to be directly relevant if he is talking about the labour force figures that you commenced the question with. I'm listening carefully to his answer. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a pretty serious moment for our nation, and I think I should be allowed to provide the explanation and position of the government. This is a very difficult time for many Australians, in particular those who, through no fault of their own, have lost their job. As what the government has set out to do, working with governments around Australia, is to get on top of the health threat by slowing down the spread of the virus and suppress the spread of the virus, by providing support to businesses to ensure that as many Australians as possible could remain connected to those businesses. And we've also, of course, provided significantly enhanced transitional support to those Australians who lost their job. Effectively, anyone who doesn't get support through JobKeeper is, of course, able to access consistent with appropriate arrangements, is able to access jobs.
Order, Senator Cormann. Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. A total of 2.3 million workers were affected by either losing their job or working reduced hours in May, reflecting a fifth of the entire workforce. How many more Australians will lose their jobs in September when Mr Morrison snaps back JobKeeper?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. What I would say in response to the last part of the question is we will continue to make responsible decisions, as we have done so far, to ensure that we have the strongest possible economic recovery and that Australians have the best possible opportunity to get back into work and to get ahead. These are not easy considerations. These are not easy decisions. You might want to pretend that there are some magic bullets that can somehow make it all go away. We are doing the absolute best we can, and we're doing absolutely the best we can to ensure we have the strongest possible economic recovery on the other side, and that jobs and that people get back into jobs as quickly as possible. And of course, it is already happening. It is already happening as the economy, as restrictions on the economy are being eased. People are able to get back into some of those jobs that had been lost. It would, of course, more people would be able to get back into work if some of those states would open those state borders.
Order, Senator Cormann. Time for the answer has expired. Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Minister, the underutilisation rate now stands at 20.2%, which is a new record high. In the face of the first recession in 29 years and the highest unemployment figures in 20 years, why is Mr Morrison so determined to snap back and leave people behind?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I completely reject the premise of that last part of the question. We are very focused on making sure that no one is left behind. We're very focused on making sure that no one is left behind. But I mean, in case the opposition didn't notice, we are going through a pretty difficult period as a result of something that we didn't cause. That workforce participation levels before the COVID-19 pandemic hit were the highest on records. In particular, female participation rate was the highest ever. And of course, I mean, we've been hit by a pretty devastating virus. That has had a pretty devastating effect on our economy and on economies around the world. But you know what? In Australia, the Australian people know that compared to other countries around the world, we are actually doing comparatively well. That doesn't mean that people aren't feeling hardship and difficulties. Of course they are. And we are focused on making sure that we get back into the strongest possible position as soon as possible.
Senator Molan.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. In light of the unprecedented economic situation caused by COVID-19 pandemic, can the Minister update the Senate on the Australian Labor figures for the month of May and what steps the Morrison government is taking to drive our economic recovery from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic?
The Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Molan for his question. And as the Leader of the Senate has stated, Australia and Australians have shown great resilience in the face of COVID-19, which has caused both a worldwide health and economic crisis. Mr. President, the labour force figures released today for the month of May were not unexpected. They continue to reflect the negative impact that COVID-19 is having on the labour market, but in particular because of the survey period in which the labour force figures are taken, which is the first 2 weeks of May. They were actually taken in the situation where we had the height of the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. Mr. President, whilst it is clear that the economic fallout from COVID-19 will continue for some time, the government has moved quickly to protect both the health and jobs of all Australians and put in place substantial measures to help cushion the impact of COVID-19. While today's ABS figures do highlight the devastating effects of COVID-19, it is important to note, as the Leader of the Senate has stated, that Australia did enter this position and this crisis from a position of economic strength and record employment. Total employment in Australia now stands at 12.15 million. The unemployment rate today has risen to 7.1%. Mr. President, every single job loss as a result of COVID-19 is devastating. But what it does highlight, as Minister Cormann has stated, is the imperative to open up our economy. The states need to open their borders. That is what now needs to happen, and the Prime Minister has been very, very clear in this regard.
Senator Cash. Senator Molan, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Watt.
How are the government's record economic stimulus measures supporting our economy, keeping Australians in jobs and building the lifeline businesses needed to endure the economic crisis created by COVID-19?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr. President, having flattened the health curve in relation to COVID-19, the Prime Minister has made it very clear. We are now fighting unemployment in Australia, and that is the very clear message that we can all take today from today's labour force figures. But, Mr. President, our priority, our #1 priority as a government, is to support the economy to grow, and that is why we need all states and territories to open their borders, because that means that people can start travelling, businesses can get back to work and they can create more jobs for Australians. And that is what we are all about. But that is why, as a government, we have also invested a record $260 billion, equivalent to 13.3% of GDP, into the economy. Mr. President, the measures that we have implemented, they have provided the essential support that many businesses have needed to get them through the COVID-19 crisis.
Senator Molan, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. How will the government's 5-year JobMaker plan chart a course for economic growth and recovery and create jobs for Australians?
Senator Cash.
Well, again, Mr President, getting people back into jobs, ensuring that the economy is able to reopen so that it can grow, that is where we need to start. And, Mr President, as the Prime Minister outlined in his address to the National Press Club recently, our JobMaker plan, it is critical to lift growth, not just for the next few months, not just for now, but we have a plan for Australians. We're going to bring them with us as we reopen the economy, and at least for the next 5 years. That's our JobMaker plan. Mr President, in particular, we're going to be supporting skills and industrial relations reform. Why? Because we need this to improve our workplace productivity, but also to ensure that employers are getting the skilled workforce that they need. And of course, the great work that the Minister for Trade is doing in pursuing free trade agreements, building new relationships, giving more businesses the opportunity to export
Senator
their jobs.
Cash, time for the answer has expired. Senator Sterle.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann. And I refer to an article in today's Australian Financial Review entitled "Old Jobs May Have to Go in PM's Recovery Plan." Minister, which are the old jobs that the PM has given up on?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We haven't given up on any jobs. But you know what? We are not living in a socialist command-control economy. I mean, jobs are generated by businesses around Australia, not by government. And the Prime Minister is just being honest with the Australian people. And you know, I remember a former Prime Minister who's actually said something pretty similar. You know, in an interview with Kerry O'Brien. I think his name was Paul Keating. You know, and when he was asked, "Oh, all these jobs that were lost when you reduced tariffs, what do you think about that?" He said, "You know what? But there were more new, better jobs as a result of economic reform." And you know what we are focused on is on more new, better jobs. I mean, there will be some jobs which will not come back, and it'll be better for the Australian people if they can find genuine, good quality jobs in a strongly recovering economy on the other side. That is, of course, what everyone in this chamber should want to see. We can't be looking backwards. Sadly, what happened has happened. It has been devastating, it's been difficult, and some businesses, sadly, will not be able to recover. That is a fact of life. We can now try and pretend and lie to the Australian people. We will not do that. You go right ahead and pretend to the Australian people that through government edict, through socialist policies, that somehow you can preserve every job in the economy no matter what. That is not the truth. In a free market economy, genuine jobs will be created by genuine, viable, profitable businesses, and that is what we want to see on the other side. Successful, profitable businesses that will hire more Australians again, businesses that have the confidence to invest in their future success because they know that the framework is right and that we got onto the other side of this crisis. We should never pretend to the Australian people that somehow governments can artificially protect every single job in the economy in the context of the sort of crisis that we've just dealt with. So just think about it, reflect on it. Paul Keating used to understand this. Clearly you guys have gone so far to the left that even Paul Keating would be ashamed of you now.
Order. Senator Sterle, a supplementary question.
I do. Thank you, Mr President. It is reported that the Morrison government is giving up on keeping Australians in their jobs and plans to shift them to JobSeeker in September. Minister, which of the 3 million Australians currently relying on JobKeeper has Mr Morrison given up on and is planning to force onto welfare?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You clearly didn't listen to a single word I said in response to the primary question. Not a single word. We want every single Australian to have the best possible opportunity to get back into work, back into a job. We absolutely want every Australian to have the best possible opportunity to get back into work. But you know what? We are dealing with the economic impact of a 1-in-100-year global pandemic. And Australia, comparatively speaking, is performing better than many others, which is not to say that Australians aren't.
Senator Wong on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr President. Point of order, direct relevance. The question was in relation—
Order. I'd like to hear the point of order. Senator Wong.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr President. The question was in relation to reports that the government is planning to shift people from JobKeeper to JobSeeker on a day where we've seen nearly 830,000 Australians lose their jobs since March. We would like an answer to the question, which of the 3 million Australians on JobKeeper is the government planning to shift onto welfare?
I would contend that it is a very broadly worded question, Senator Wong. I've allowed you to restate it, but a question that has what I might call somewhat language that is contestable can be answered in a similar fashion. I think the minister is being directly relevant given that. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The truth is, and the Australian people understand, we are dealing with an incredibly difficult situation. We've had to provide crisis-level support to the economy, to business and to jobs, which was temporary crisis-level support. There's two very significant decisions that we will have to make as a country when it comes to the on the economic front in the next few weeks and months. One is how to transition in the best possible way out of the elevated level of the crisis level of temporary support to the economy in a way that ensures that Australians are not left behind.
Time for the answers expired. Senator Sterle, a final supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. At the same time that Mr Morrison is forcing Australians off JobKeeper and onto JobSeeker, he is also cutting the rate of JobSeeker. Minister, can the government confirm that it is intending to force millions of Australians who are currently have jobs to live on as little as $40 a day from September?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's always been very clear the crisis-level temporary support through JobKeeper and the enhanced JobSeeker payment, that is including the COVID supplement, is in place for 6 months. And we are currently, and Treasury is in the process of reviewing the JobKeeper arrangements and also the interaction with JobSeeker. There will be decisions over the next few weeks and over the next month or so in relation to how best to transition out of the temporary level of support, because ultimately the objective ought to be that businesses around Australia are able to pay for their employees' wages out of their income rather than on the basis of taxpayer support. That's got to be the objective. But of course we'll continue to make responsible decisions, and the next part of it, of course, is we need to ensure we reform the policy setting such that we can have the strongest possible and most sustained possible recovery and economic growth trajectory on the other side.
Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. Through you, President. Minister, yesterday, in question time, you said that the new rate of JobSeeker was, under the coronavirus supplement was temporary and time-limited, i.e. it finishes. Today, the media are reporting that JobSeeker will be permanently increased. Can you confirm the rate of JobSeeker and youth allowance will be permanently increased from the end of September? And when was this decision made, if that's the case?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I probably would caution the senator opposite who asked the question to take her policy direction from the media. Perhaps she might like to listen to what I've said in here on successive occasions, but also the responses that have previously been provided to the questions that have been asked of Senator Cormann by the opposition, which have clearly outlined—
Senator, on a point of order. Order. Senator
Yes,
Siewert, have you concluded your answer? Sorry, have you concluded your answer, Senator? Senator Siewert, on a point of order?
Sorry, I honestly cannot hear the minister's answer.
You're not the only one. Senator Ruston, we've had a request from a colleague to be able to hear the answer, so I'm going to ask all senators to keep that in mind when they disorderly interject. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As I was saying to Senator Siewert when she didn't hear my response, was that the answers that have actually been provided in this place to the previous questions by Senator Cormann, I think, really clearly outline the responsible action that this government's taking to make sure that we put everything in place to support Australians through this coronavirus pandemic. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to get our economy back going again, to make sure that we can create the jobs, we'll get businesses back to work, and we can create the jobs so that Australians who find themselves at the moment without work or on the JobKeeper payment are able to get back to work.
Senator Siewert, on a point of order.
Point of order. This is information that we actually heard yesterday, most of it. I asked a specific question. Is it the case that JobSeeker will now be permanently increased from the end of September?
That was the conclusion of your question, Senator Siewert. I believe the minister is being directly relevant to parts of the question. She's talking about the allowance. It may not be the question senators seek. There's an opportunity to debate that after question time. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, as the Prime Minister has responded today at his press conference in relation to a very similar question that Senator Siewert asked, is that the most important thing that we can do as a government is to make sure that we work to get the economy reopened. But what we won't do, Senator Siewert, is get ahead of ourselves. And I think that's exactly what you're doing here. You're getting ahead of yourself, and you're getting yourself overly excited about a report that was in the paper this morning. And look, Senator Siewert, you've been here long enough to understand that you cannot always believe everything that you read in the paper. What you should do is you should take your policy direction from the answers that I give you when you ask me questions, and perhaps take some note of what Senator Cormann has said in response to a similar question that was asked by those opposite, and also maybe listen to the Prime Minister's press conferences, like this morning when he did the press conference with Senator Cash, so that you can get a clear understanding straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, about government policy.
Senator Siewert, a supplementary question.
Thank you. Is the minister saying that they are not going to be increasing the job seeker payment permanently, given that two media outlets, the West Australian and the Australian Financial Review, happen to, on the same day, conveniently run the same story? What, they weren't worded up?
Senator Ruston.
Mr President, I've got no idea what the basis of some of these spurious stories are. But Senator, can I just say, if you'd like to listen to my answer, I'm happy to give it to you.
Senator Siewert, you asked for silence before. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And Senator Siewert, as I said to the answer to the previous question, you need to do probably two things, a bit of advice, two things. One is don't listen to everything that you read in the paper, and the other one is that really I prefer that you didn't verbal me. Much of what you say, you come in here, is actually what you said yesterday, not what I said yesterday. And so what I would like to reiterate is that everything that I said to you yesterday, Senator Siewert, I stand by. The coronavirus supplement that was put in place in March as a time-limited temporary payment to assist Australians who found themselves in a job market that basically closed overnight was a temporary measure. That remains the case.
Senator Siewert, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. I will take the minister's advice, and I will reread those the articles in the media. It seemed pretty clear to me, but they also articulated or said that the government is talking to backbenchers over dinner. Now, I'm wondering whether the backbenchers are suggesting a rate to the government.
Senator Ruston.
Senator, thank you very much. Possibly. Thank you very much, Mr President. And I just draw to the attention of the chamber that Senator Siewert said that I had in the previous question told her to read the paper. I didn't actually say that. In fact, I said the contrary. I said, don't believe everything you read in the paper. Actually listen to what I respond to you and response to your answers to your questions, and listen to Senator Cormann and listen to the Prime Minister. Now, in relation to who has dinner with who in the government, I have got no idea. I'm sure we all have dinner with each other on a regular basis. But what I can say, Senator Siewert, is this government takes very seriously our responsibility to look after Australians who are finding it very difficult at the moment because of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic has had on all Australians. I mean, we were all devastated to see the figures that Senator Cash had to announce this morning. Like she said, not unexpected, but nonetheless devastating.
Senator Patrick.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to Senator Colbeck in his capacity as Health Portfolio Minister and the Chair of the Australia-New Zealand Forum on Food Regulation, and I ask these questions on behalf of Senator Griff. I refer to the documents provided by Minister Colbeck and Littleproud in response to Senator Griff's order for production of documents on Fsanz, proposal for mandatory pregnancy warnings on packaged alcohol. The OPD shows Minister Littleproud received advice from the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, which discusses industry concerns but still concludes, and I quote, "The department is of the view that there is a lack of evidence to support concerns raised by the portfolio alcohol industries." Why did the federal government use its vote in the Forum on Food Regulation to ask Fsanz to review its proposal? because of concerns raised from industry, when even the department concludes that the industry's concerns are exaggerated?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thanks, Senator, for his question. He raised a very important issue, and my colleagues sitting around the table with me at Food Ministers had, as Senators aware, a very serious conversation with respect to this issue. We listened closely to all perspectives, but came to the view that the one thing that we did want to do, as a result of our considerations with respect to alcohol labelling, was move from a situation where we had voluntary labelling on alcohol containers to a compulsory one. That was one of the decisions we made, but we also did consider some of the representations that have been made to us by a range of stakeholders, and we asked FSANZ to do some additional work, which they're currently doing. And that FSANZ will report back to us next week, and there's another meeting of the Food Ministers' Council next month, which will, I hope, make a final decision to form compulsory labelling for pregnancy warnings on alcohol receptacles. I sincerely hope that that's the case, and that's the conversation that I have. I understand, Mr President, that FSANZ, off the back of the meeting in March, has been back talking to all sides of this discussion, the medical professionals, those who are lobbying in respect of better management of alcohol labelling around FASD, because we all want to see the incidence of FASD stamped out completely. It's something that I think that we can do and we should do. That's why we are so firm in our view that there should be compulsory labels, labelling, moving away from the circumstance of the voluntary system that's in place right now. And so we will consider the report provided to us by FSANZ when we come to that meeting and hopefully make a final decision.
Order. Senator Patrick, a supplementary question.
Yeah, thank you. You've talked about meeting with stakeholders and so forth, but ultimately, you've suggested that you're going in a particular direction. But the OPD suggests that the cost proposals were deemed, and I quote, an unreasonable cost burden. The federal government represented only one of these votes, yet the forum has come to that conclusion. How did it come to that conclusion?
Order.
And why did you
Senator
vote
Patrick,
that way?
time for the questions expired. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Senator Patrick's correct. The Commonwealth Government has only one vote on that forum, and that forum voted by majority to ask FSANZ to do some additional work. So, in other words, the Commonwealth and enough states and territories made a decision to do some further work. I know that FSANZ has been back to industry to check some of the figures that they provided with respect to the potential cost impact on them. That evidence will be provided, I'm certain, in the reporting that FSANZ brings back to Food Ministers when it reports back to us formally later this month. That will be considered as a part of the overall discussion at Food Ministers' meeting, and I think it's about the 21st of July. So my sincere hope is that once we get through the report that comes back from FSANZ to Food Ministers, which is due next week, once we consider that, we're in a position to be able to move to
Order. Senator Colbeck, time for the answer has expired. Senator Patrick, a final supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, Minister. Mr President, Minister, you talk about engagement with a whole range of stakeholders, yet the OPD suggests that there are only two meetings with the alcohol industry, one on the 27th of February and another on the 3rd of March. So perhaps that doesn't contain all the information. Could you provide the chamber, perhaps on notice, with all of the stakeholders with whom you've met, including health officials and others apart from industry?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm more than happy to provide any further information I can to the chamber on notice. Mr President, and I know the comment that I made with respect to FSANZ going back to industry and other stakeholders, I know has been occurring because I've been talking to FSANZ over recent weeks to understand where those negotiations and those discussions have been, to understand some of the costs that have been supplied, particularly by industry, to FSANZ and the justification of those costs, and I think that's an important thing for us as ministers to understand when we consider these matters. I do acknowledge the comments that you've made, Senator, with respect to the cost of FASD to the broader community, and clearly, without even justification of the costs that industry is putting up, the cost to society from FASD is way more than the cost to industry, and so that is something that seriously needs to be considered as part of our discussions. And as
Order.
I said,
Senator
I
Colbeck,
sincerely
time
hope
for
that
the
we have
answer
permanent
has
labels by the
expired.
time.
Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston. The Morrison government has a proud record of supporting Australians with a disability to participate in the social and economic life of our nation. Can the minister advise the Senate as to how the government is driving our economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and supporting people with autism to find and keep a job?
The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Can I thank Senator Hughes for her question? The Morrison government is absolutely committed to getting as many people with a disability into employment as we can. But despite the improvements that we've seen over the past 7 years, there still remain many barriers to employment for people who live with autism. There are still way too many people with autism who are either unemployed or underemployed. And that's why, as part of the election campaign in 2019, we made a commitment to support people with autism to not just get a job, to find a job, but to keep a job. So we know that people who live with autism have a wide range of strengths and skills, and we need to make sure that we get the message out to employers about the benefits that they can achieve for their businesses and the long-lasting improvements that they can have in their businesses by employing people with autism. And just last week, Senator Hughes was part of an announcement around funding for 2 new projects that will encourage businesses to become autism-confident employers. Firstly, Donut Bakery and Social Enterprise Crofney, along with Whitmer Advisors and Genu Training, have received $200,000 to work together to develop 2 accredited training programs for the hospitality industry. So people with autism will be able to undertake training to help them navigate the fast-paced and often rapidly changing environment in a real-world situation. With more than 50% of its workforce people with intellectual disabilities, Crofney Bakery is a leader in the Canberra region for disability employment, and I know Senator Zed Seselja is a great supporter of this business and what they do. But the Crofney Bakery started in the first place because the owner's son has Down syndrome, and they decided that it was very, very important that their child had a meaningful job that he loved. So I'm reliably informed, not just by
Senator Ruston. Senator Hughes, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister update the Senate on the national expansion of the successful Dandelion project?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. We already know through our figures that there will be a growing number of young people leaving school with autism, because the fact is that autism is the highest represented category in the NDIS. So it's very important that this government continues to focus on helping this particular group of people successfully transition out of school and into employment. And that's why the Dandelion project, which has been a fantastic success in conjunction with DXC Technologies, will receive further funding of $1.5 million so that we can expand this particular project. So work's already commenced on developing a suite of autism-specific training tools for disability employment service providers and participants and employers, which will target disability employment service providers so that they can understand the specific benefits of supporting people with autism into a work environment.
Senator Hughes, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Minister Ruston, as a very confident autism employer. It's very much appreciated. How is the Disability Employment Service Program supporting Australians with a disability to find work in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Disability employment service providers play a very, very important role in assisting people to get jobs and to stay in jobs who live with disability. and as part of the original in March announcements by the government in supporting people with disability and recognising the challenges that the COVID crisis was going to present to them, we announced a $61 million funding package to support disability employment services to ensure that they were able to continue to provide the support to people with disability through this unprecedented time. So disability service providers are reporting strong numbers of people who are being placed into employment and to be supported in jobs in excess of 26 weeks, because we know that if we can get somebody into work for a longer period of time, the chances of them remaining in employment are so much higher than they otherwise would be.
Senator Ciccone.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister. On Monday, the Prime Minister and the Minister said that the government would not be pursuing excessive austerity. Does the Minister believe that forcing 3.5 million Australians off JobKeeper in September is excessive austerity?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, what we have done over the last few months is provide historic crisis-level fiscal support to the economy, to business, to working Australians and indeed to those Australians who sadly lost their job. It's a program that's been put in place for 6 months. This program has been put in place for 6 months. That was always very clear. This was a temporary program, but of course we are considering very carefully on how we most appropriately transition back into a situation more akin to normal. And of course the objective is to maximise the strength of the economic recovery on the other side. That is what we're focused on, to get as many Australians back into work, to get as many jobs back as possible, to get as many Australians back into a genuine job, and indeed able to earn a living and ensure that they have the best possible opportunity to get ahead. Australians can be absolutely confident that we'll make sensible decisions, responsible decisions, as we have done throughout this crisis so far. And of course, when relevant decisions are made about next steps and the next phase, we'll make relevant announcements.
Senator Ciccone, a supplementary question.
Does the Minister believe that removing the coronavirus supplement in September and forcing as many as 5 million Australians to live on as little as $40 a day is excessive austerity?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I mean, I would refer the good senator to my answer to the primary question. We are focused on making sure that we get as many Australians back into work as soon as possible. And of course, if some of these states that are persisting with state border closures were to open some of these borders, even more people would be able to get into work sooner. We need to ensure that we make the decisions today to maximise the strength of the economic recovery. Maximising the strength of the economic recovery will ensure that more Australians get back into work sooner. That is what all of us should be working on together.
Senator Ciccone, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Does the Minister believe that cuts to the pension, family payments, hospitals and schools, etc. in the 2014 budget were excessive austerity?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The 2014-15 budget helped ensure that we went into this crisis from a position of comparative fiscal strength. If we had made the hard decisions over 6 years to fix the mess that you guys left behind, we would have been in a weaker position to deal with this crisis. The Australian people know that it is thanks to the work of our government over the last 6 years, repairing the budget, repairing the absolute mess that you left behind, that we were in a position to provide support to the economy, to provide support to business, to provide support to those Australians who are working for a business that is struggling through this period, and indeed to provide unprecedented support to those Australians who lost their job. I can't believe that the Labor Party Tactics Committee in the Senate would be so brazen to ask such a question. What chutzpah, when clearly it is now proven how important it was that we did the hard yards fixing the fiscal mess that you guys left behind.
Order. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator Cash. Can the Minister outline to the Senate how the Liberal National Government's infrastructure pipeline, including the Roads of Strategic Importance program, is supporting Australian jobs and assisting regional communities, businesses and producers in their post-pandemic recovery.
Order on my left before I call the Minister. The Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Canavan for the question. And as Senator Canavan well knows, the Liberal National Government, we support rural and regional Australia because that is exactly what is in our DNA. In terms of our commitment to regional transport infrastructure, Senator Canavan, you'd be aware that since 2013-14, it now totals, Mr President, more than $30 billion. $30 billion. And this is, of course, delivering real outcomes for regional communities. What's it doing? It's improving roads and rail to better connect regional communities. Mr President, programs which regional Australia is benefiting from include the Black Spot program, Roads to Recovery, the Bridges Renewal program, Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity program, and of course, as Senator Canavan has referred to, the $4.5 billion Roads of Strategic Importance initiative. Mr President, this program, the government's Roads of Strategic Importance initiative, it's a major program for supporting and developing the transport networks across key corridors in regional Australia. The program itself primarily supports network improvements, which involves packages of investment to raise the standards of the road, including feeder roads, to provide more reliable road networks. The corridor approach provides a more reliable road network, improves access for higher capacity vehicles, better connects regional communities, and, of course, facilitates tourism opportunities. And those tourism opportunities would be further facilitated if, obviously, states would actually open up and territories their borders. But, Senator Canavan, in terms of Queensland in particular, it's benefiting now from over $1 billion of committed funding under the Roads of Strategic Importance initiative, and this includes key investments including the Mount Isa to Rockhampton corridor upgrade and the Townsville to Roma corridor upgrade.
Senator Canavan, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Great news from the Minister. Can the Minister also inform the Senate of how projects like the Yeppoon-Rockhampton Road duplication and the sealing of the Springshaw-Tambo Road will increase safety and boost tourism for these communities?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And as Senator Canavan would be aware, the government has committed $64 million to the Yeppoon-Rockhampton Road duplication. And this project will deliver targeted upgrades, including duplicating sections of Yeppoon Road. In terms of the project and what it is expected to deliver, increased economic productivity by reducing costs to industry through better network efficiencies. It will improve road safety by reducing unsafe overtaking and the associated risks of head-on collisions. And it will also increase route capacity to accommodate future growth in traffic volume through increases in economic activity in the region. Mr President, regarding the Springshaw to Tambo project that Senator Canavan raised, this is another great example of the investment by the Liberal National Government, where we have committed $40 million which will directly support local producers. Mr President, we understand that this type of investment will assist regional
Senator
Australia.
Cash. Senator Canavan, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister inform the Senate of what can be done to fast-track many of those great road projects you've mentioned under programs like the Roads of Strategic Importance program, and to inject money, much-needed money, into regions hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic and help local communities?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And the government, the Liberal National Government, we understand that we need to work closely with states and territories to fast-track infrastructure where and when possible. In fast-tracking infrastructure, you create jobs, as with our recent announcement in terms of creating around 66,000 jobs. On the 29th of April, the Deputy Prime Minister announced works to seal roads, build overtaking lanes, upgrade intersections and improve safety will start sooner rather than later under an agreement reached between the Australian and the Queensland governments on 22 jointly funded regional road projects worth, Senator Canavan, $185 million. Mr President, these early work projects will be delivered on corridors identified under the Roads of Strategic Importance initiative. And of course, delivering early works through this initiative will give regional Queensland communities access to new projects and, of course, much-needed jobs.
Order. Senator Cash. Senator Ayres.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Cormann. ABS figures show that payroll jobs in the accommodation and food services sector fell by nearly 30% since March. Before COVID-19, more than 4,200 people in Eden Monaro worked in cafes, restaurants and accommodation in towns like Bega, Murrumbateman, Tumut and Queanbeyan. Can the Minister confirm how many of these 4,200 jobs are old jobs that Mr Morrison has given up on?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I would just again say I reject the premise of that final part of the question. We want every single Australian to have the best possible opportunity to get back into work. And let me say that, of course, the food and accommodation services have been particularly hard hit. We are dealing with a 1-in-100-year global pandemic with devastating impacts all around the world, including here in Australia. But we are performing comparatively better than other parts of the world. But let me say, I mean, you talk about tourism and hospitality services across Eden Monaro. They would be in so much better a position if only the Queensland State Labor government opened those state borders and those people from Brisbane who want to go into the snow in Eden Monaro could go in.
Sorry, I was taking advice from your whip. Senator Watt.
Point of order on relevance. It seems the minister needs to be reminded that Eden Monaro is not in Queensland. It's in New South Wales.
To be order. I'm not going to rule on the point of. To be fair, I was not listening at that point. I was taking advice from one of the whips. I will continue to listen to the minister's answer. Senator Cormann.
It is very clear that those socialists over there don't understand about the implications of closed state borders. Closed state borders means that Queenslanders are restricted from going into the snow in Monaro without going back into quarantine for a couple of weeks.
Order.
I mean, clearly, this is why the Labor Party always stuffs up the economy, because they don't understand these basic facts, that closed borders actually restrict economic activity. There would be more jobs in Eden Monaro, if the people of Brisbane could go to the snow in Thredbo. And indeed, if they could go to all these fantastic restaurants and accommodation facilities all around the city of Eden Monaro. It is the state Labor government in Queensland that is holding those jobs back, and quite frankly, the state Labor government in Queensland should open those borders now.
Order. I'm going to ask senators on both sides to take their breath and count to 10, or when I start naming them and calling them to order. On my right as well. Senator Ayres,
get easy back there,
supplementary
Jerry.
question.
Always somebody else's fault. Retail expert, Queensland University of Technology Professor Gary Mortimer has warned that many retailers may not reopen once support is removed. He said, quote, "Retailers will see this as a chance to cut off the dead wood in their networks. How can the more than 7,000 sales assistants, hospitality and retail managers in towns like Queanbeyan, Jindabyne, Cooma or Eden tell if they have one of the old jobs that Mr Morrison's turned his back on?"
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Even for socialists, that is twisted logic. You know what? I mean, people in shops will get their jobs back when consumers go back into those shops to buy products. That's how you get jobs back. I mean, somehow he seems to think that by government edict you can sort of pop up these jobs and people, they sit on their chair? Like, I mean, clearly we want the economy to recover as strongly as possible. We want businesses to be back in business and successful and profitable and viable as soon as possible. We want businesses to have confidence to invest and hire more Australians again. But it's got to be on the basis of genuine activity, not because the government somehow provides an edict.
Senator Watt.
Not because provide some sort of edict that sort of says this now shall be a job. I mean, there's got to be. I mean, in a free market economy, there's a bit more to it. And our government is making sure that we've got the best possible policy settings in place to ensure that people all around Australia, including in Eden Monaro, have the best possible opportunity to get back into work if they've lost their job, and indeed to remain in work if they have a job.
Time for the answers expired. Senator Ayres, a final supplementary question.
Before COVID-19, 1 in 10 workers in the capital region were out of work or looking for more work. Before COVID-19. How can the Australian people trust the government to manage the recovery when regional Australians were already being left behind before the pandemic?
Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. When we came into government in 2013, we inherited a weakening economy, rising unemployment, a rapidly deteriorating budget position. We worked very hard for 6 years to turn that situation
Senator
around.
Keneally, Senator Watt.
Record workforce participation, a lower unemployment rate. I mean, your
Senator
unemployment
Watt.
rate was headed to past 6.25%. How do I know
Senator
that?
Cormann. I've got Senator Wong on a point of order.
Mr. President, again, on a day we've had nearly 250,000 Australians lose their job, bringing the numbers to 835,000 since March. I think people in this region deserve this minister answering the question rather than a political rant.
With respect, I'm not sure. I think the minister, given the tone of the question, is actually being relevant, although I might add that I could barely hear him over my shouting for order, and I'll ask senators to remain quiet so that I may rule on future points of order. Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The people in Eden Monaro, in particular in Queanbeyan, who are quite close to what happens in Canberra, know the mess that you guys left behind: a weakening economy, rising unemployment, and a rapidly deteriorating budget position. They know that we worked hard to turn the situation around, and they know that we went into this crisis which came to us from external factors. They know that we were in a comparatively stronger position because of the work that we've done over the last 6 years. And indeed, they know that we will continue to make the responsible decisions. We will continue to make the responsible decisions moving forward to ensure that every Australian has the best possible opportunity to get ahead.
The answer has expired. Senator Davey.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Cyber Safety and the Arts, Senator Reynolds. How is the Liberal and Nationals in government supporting jobs and economic recovery for regional and rural Australians, including by improving telecommunications access through the Mobile Black Spot program?
The Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Cyber Safety and the Arts, Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Davey for the question, and I also commend her for her commitment to rural and regional Australia. The Morrison-McCormack government recognises the vital importance of mobile phone coverage to Australians living, working and travelling in regional and remote parts of our great nation. That's why we're delivering on a commitment to improve mobile coverage across Australia through our $380 million investment in mobile black spots. The first 5 rounds of this program are funding for over 1,200 mobile base stations across Australia. Over 800 base stations have been activated and are now delivering real benefits to regional and rural communities right across Australia. The Eden Monaro communities of Rosewood, Forbes Creek and Yass River Road are examples of how these base stations are delivering better coverage for all Australians. 34 mobile base stations have been funded in Eden Monaro under the first 5 rounds of the Mobile Black Spot program. 22 of these base stations have been completed and are now providing coverage to residents in the electorate. In addition to the $380 million Mobile Black Spot program, we are also delivering $60 million to the Regional Connectivity program. But, Mr. President, there is yet more. Other initiatives to improve telecommunications for all Australians include a community-focused telecommunications grants round, a digital technical hub to provide additional advice and assistance to Australians in regional and remote areas, and also trials of alternative technologies that will provide voice telephony services in remote areas. These initiatives are all yet further evidence of the Coalition Government's unwavering commitment to Australians who live and work in regional, rural and remote areas of our great nation.
Senator Davey, a supplementary question.
Thank you. In the wake of the summer bushfires, what is our government doing to strengthen the resilience of telecommunications networks in these regional areas?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. As part of this government's $650 million bushfire recovery package announced last month, we are investing over $37 million to strengthen telecommunications resilience in bushfire and disaster-prone areas across our nation. This will ensure that individuals and communities in regional areas of Australia can stay connected during emergencies. Our investment in the Telecommunications Emergency Resilience Package contains 3 key measures to address telecommunications outages during natural disasters. Firstly, $18 million to upgrade backup power and also backhaul for mobile base stations and other telecommunications infrastructure. Secondly, $10 million for portable facilities that mobile carriers and also NBN Co will deploy to address temporary coverage gaps caused by power outages. And thirdly, $7 million to install NBN satellite connections at 2,000 rural fire depots
Senator
and
Reynolds,
evacuation
time for
centres.
the answer has expired. Senator Davey, a final supplementary question.
And finally, to support regional Australians like me through the COVID-19 pandemic, how is the National Broadband Network helping people in these regional and remote areas to stay connected?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President. The Coalition Government is working very closely with NBN Co to ensure that all regional Australians stay connected during this very challenging period. NBN Co is providing an additional 45 gigabytes of data for each standard Sky Muster plan until the end of August. This effectively doubles the average monthly data limit. They've also established a $150 million financial relief and assistance fund to support customers affected by the pandemic. This includes $50 million to help low-income households with school-aged children to access the internet. And, Mr President, these initiatives are working. There are now more than 100,000 Australian homes and also businesses who are now receiving faster broadband over Sky Muster satellite services.
Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. And my question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck. Minister, is there a difference between after tax and before tax?
The Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Mr. President, Mr. President, thanks Senator Walsh for the question. There is clearly a difference between after tax and before tax. I mean, I think that would be a statement of the obvious, but it doesn't mean not subject to tax.
Senator Walsh, a supplementary question.
Minister, in your media release of 20 March 2020, you state that the retention bonus for aged care workers is a payment of up to either $800 for direct care workers or $600 for in-home care workers after tax. However, the fact sheet on your department's website says these payments are before tax. Minister, how can both of these be correct?
Senator Colbeck.
Mr. President, as I said in my answer to Senator Walsh's primary question, it does not say that it does not mean not subject to tax. And, Mr. President, as I've said in this chamber on a number of occasions this week, and Senator Walsh has acknowledged in her questions a number of times herself, the commitment that this government made to aged care workers, which I might say, Mr. President, is the only group within the Australian economy that have received specific support through the COVID-19 circumstance in acknowledgement of their importance to managing of COVID-19 within the aged care sector would be up to $800 and up to $600 for those working in home care. And it's very, very important to acknowledge that fact, Mr. President. We've always said up to those numbers, and in fact it's a significant contribution to aged care workers of $1,600 up to $1,600 and up to $1,200.
Has expired. Senator Walsh, a final supplementary question.
Minister, I refer to a worksheet on the Tax Office website designed for high school students in years 7 to 10. Minister, using this worksheet and applying it to a residential aged care worker working more than 30 hours per week being paid at level 4 of the award, isn't it the case that the worker will be $260 worse off during Australia's first recession in 29 years because of your decision?
Senator Colbeck.
Well, Mr. President, the circumstance of any individual worker and their taxation liabilities will depend on their individual circumstances, Mr. President. And so I don't pretend to be able to calculate and individuals' taxation circumstances, depending, Mr. President.
Order, Senator Colbeck. I've got Senator Wong on a point of order. Senator Wong.
Point of order. At which point does this minister take any responsibility?
That's not a point of order. Senator Wong, the minister to continue. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as I've said, Mr. President, the individual tax circumstances of any worker working, whether it's in aged care or any other industry across the country, will be determined by their individual circumstances.
Senator Scarr.
Mr. President, my question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. Can the minister inform the Senate how Australia is working with the Pacific Islands Forum, our Pacific family, to respond to pressing challenges in the region, including the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impacts?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Scarr for his interest and the question. Australia, with our Pacific family, has swiftly and effectively responded to the health impacts of COVID-19. And our Pacific regional institutions have been absolutely central to this response. And yesterday I joined PIF colleagues for the inaugural virtual meeting of the Ministerial Action Group for the COVID-19 Humanitarian Pathway. The meeting with my counterparts from Tuvalu, who chaired the meeting, Cook Islands, Fiji, the Marshalls, Nauru, New Zealand, Tonga and Vanuatu, and also key regional organisations such as the Pacific Community, the Forum Fisheries Agency, the University of the South Pacific, the Pacific Immigration Development Community and the Oceania Customs Organisation, discussed the movement of essential supplies and humanitarian support and personnel in the COVID-19 context. We've strongly supported the Pacific Humanitarian Pathway Initiative of the PIF since its inception, and forums like yesterday are a concrete example of collaboration in the region to find that collaborative solution to the pressing health, social and economic challenges from the pandemic. To illustrate the challenge, perhaps, Mr. President, when ministers first met to discuss the pathway, there were 1.2 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 worldwide. Today, there are over 8 million. So our strong collaborative response has been vital to helping the region keep infection rates as low as possible. There are currently 322 cases in the Pacific, thanks in part to this excellent cooperation and to the efforts of those governments. And our two largest Pacific neighbours, Papua New Guinea and Fiji, have both gone at least 42 days without a confirmed case, which is very, very important in the minimising of transmission and infection rates.
Senator Scarr, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister advise what were the practical outcomes from yesterday's meeting of the Pacific Humanitarian Pathway Ministerial Action Group? The practical outcomes for Australia and the region.
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And we were very pleased to endorse an important set of regional protocols for deploying personnel, for customs and biosecurity, for immigration and for repatriations. And that will help a lot with clearance of aircraft, clearance of ships that are transporting medical, humanitarian and technical assistance. The protocols are also going to support the safety of technical personnel for critical responses. That might include Australian medical and logistics experts, for example, in the Solomon Islands, in Papua New Guinea and in Fiji. The Pathway Chair, who's Tuvalu's Foreign Minister, Simon Kofi, recognised Australia's support to the World Food Programme and the World Health Organisation Pacific Joint Incident Management Team, which are both central to the regional response to COVID-19. I understand the joint team has received over 350 assistance requests and deployed 40 technical experts across the Pacific to support the collaborative effort in addressing COVID-19.
Senator Scarr, a final supplementary question.
Could the minister advise the Senate on the impact of COVID-19 on the Pacific Labour Scheme?
Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Pacific Labour Scheme is very important to Australia and it's important to our Pacific neighbours. It allows Australian employers to fill labour gaps and it allows Pacific workers to earn remittances to send home to their families. Like others, Pacific Island workers have had their lives, their work disrupted by COVID-19. There are over 1,000 PLS workers in Australia, and for those who've lost jobs, we have been working hard to help them find new employment or to arrange their safe return home. We've provided all relevant health advice and guidance on COVID-19 restrictions and other support, including pastoral care and Pacific language information on COVID-19 responses.
Mr President, I am concerned by recent reports about the situation of some Pacific Islanders under the scheme. We are working closely with approved employers, with Pacific governments and with communities to safeguard the welfare of these workers. Senators opposite have also raised this issue, and I want to assure them and to assure the community that the government is committed to rectifying these issues in a successful and safe PLS.
Expired. Senator Cormann.
I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
If I could ask senators to pause